This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Reading by Robin Cotter, July 2007. Miscellaneous Essays by Thomas De Quincey. Joan of Arc, Part 4. On the Wednesday after Trinity Sunday in 1431, being then about 19 years of age, the Maid of Arc underwent her martyrdom. She was conducted before midday, guarded by 800 spearmen, to a platform of prodigious height, constructed of wooden billets, supported by occasional walls of lath and plaster, and traversed by hollow spaces in every direction for the creation of air-currents. The pile "struck terror," says M. Michelet, "by its height," and, as usual, the English purpose in this is viewed as one of pure malignity. But there are two ways of explaining all that. It is probable that the purpose was merciful. On the circumstances of the execution I shall not linger. Yet, to mark the almost fatal felicity of M. Michelet in finding out whatever may injure the English name, at a moment when every reader will be interested in Joanna's personal appearance, it is really edifying to notice the ingenuity by which he draws into light from a dark corner a very unjust account of it, and neglects, though lying upon the highroad, a very pleasing one. Both are from English pens. Grafton, a chronicler, but little read, being a stiff-necked John Bull, thought fit to say that no wonder Joanna should be a virgin, since her "foul face" was a satisfactory solution of that particular merit. Holinshead, on the other hand, a chronicler somewhat later, every way more important, and universally read, has given very pleasing testimony to the interesting character of Joanna's person and engaging manners. Neither of these men lived till the following century, so that personally this evidence is none at all. Grafton sullenly and carelessly believed as he wished to believe. Holinshead took pains to inquire, and reports undoubtedly the general impression of France. But I cite the case as illustrating M. Michelet's candour. [Footnote: Amongst the many ebullitions of M. Michelet's fury against us poor English are four which will be likely to amuse the reader, and they are the more conspicuous in collision with the justice which he sometimes does us, and the very indignant admiration which, under some aspects, he grants to us. 1. Our English literature he admires with some gnashing of teeth. He pronounces it "fine and sombre," but I lament to add, "sceptical, Judaic, Satanic, in a word, anti-Christian." That Lord Byron should figure as a member of this diabolical corporation will not surprise men. It will surprise them to hear that Milton is one of its satanic leaders. Many are the generous and eloquent Frenchmen, beside Chateaubriand, who have, in the course of the last 30 years, nobly suspended their own burning nationality in order to render a more rapturous homage at the feet of Milton, and some of them have raised Milton almost to a level with angelic natures. Not one of them has thought of looking for him below the earth. As to Shakespeare, M. Michelet detects in him a most extraordinary mare's nest. It is this: he does "not recollect to have seen the name of God" in any part of his works. On reading such words it is natural to rub one's eyes, and suspect that all one has ever seen in this world may have been a pure ocular delusion. In particular, I begin myself to suspect that the word "la gloire" never occurs in any Parisian journal. "The great English nation," says M. Michelet, "has one immense profound vice, to wit, pride." Why, really, that may be true, but we have a neighbour not absolutely clear of an "immense profound vice," as like ours in colour and shape as cherry to cherry. In short, M. Michelet thinks us, by fits and starts, admirable, only that we are detestable, and he would adore some of our authors, were it not that so intensely he could have wished to kick them. 2. Monsieur Michelet thinks to lodge an arrow in our sides by a very odd remark upon Thomas à Kempis, which is, that a man of any conceivable European blood, a Finlander, suppose, or a Zantiote, might have written Tom, only not an Englishman. Whether an Englishman could have forged Tom must remain a matter of doubt, unless the thing had been tried long ago. That problem was intercepted forever by Tom's perversiveness in choosing to manufacture himself. Yet, since nobody is better aware than Monsieur Michelet that this very point of Kempis having manufactured Kempis is furiously and hopelessly litigated, 3 or 4 nations claiming to have forged his work for him, the shocking old doubt will raise its snaky head once more, whether this forger, who rests in so much darkness, might not, after all, be of English blood. Tom, it may be feared, is known to modern English literature chiefly by an irreverent mention of his name in a line of Peter Pinder's Dr. Wolcott, 50 years back, where he is described as "Kempis Tom, who clearly shows the way to kingdom come." Few in these days can have read him, unless in the Methodist version of John Wesley. Amongst those few, however, happens to be myself, which arose from the accident of having, when a boy of 11, received a copy of the De Imitatione Christi as a bequest from a relation, who died very young, from which cause, and from the external prettiness of the book being a Glasgow reprint, by the celebrated Feuilly, and gaily bound, I was induced to look into it, and finally read it many times over, partly out of some sympathy which, even in those days, I had with its simplicity and devotional fervour, but much more from the savage delight I found in laughing at Tom's Latinity. That, I freely grant to Monsieur Michelet, is inimitable, else as regards substance, it strikes me that I could forge a better De Imitatione myself. But there is no knowing till one tries. Yet, after all, it is not certain whether the original was Latin. But, however that may have been, if it is possible that Monsieur Michelet can be accurate in saying that there are no less than 60 French versions, not editions, observe, but separate versions, existing of the De Imitatione, how prodigious must have been the adaptation of the book to the religious heart of the 15th century. Excepting the Bible, but excepting that only in Protestant lands, no book known to man has had the same distinction. It is the most marvellous bibliographical fact on record. Footnote A. "If Monsieur Michelet can be accurate." However, on consideration, this statement does not depend on Michelet. The bibliographer Barbier has absolutely specified 60 in a separate dissertation, 60 traductions, amongst those even that had not escaped the search. The Italian translations are said to be 30. As to mere editions, not counting the early MSS. for half a century before printing was introduced, those in Latin amount to 2,000, and those in French to 1,000. Meantime, it is very clear to me that this astonishing popularity, so entirely unparalleled in literature, could not have existed except in Roman Catholic times, nor subsequently have lingered in any Protestant land. It was the denial of Scripture fountains to thirsty lands which made this slender rill of Scripture truth so passionately welcome. Footnote A. 3. Our English girls, it seems, are as faulty in one way as we English males in another. None of us lads could have written the opera omnia of Mr. à Kempis. Neither could any of our lasses have assumed male attire like La Pucelle. But why? Because, says Michelet, English girls and German think so much of an indecorum. Well, that is a good fault, generally speaking. But when Monsieur Michelet ought to have remembered a fact in the martyrologies which justifies both parties, the French heroine for doing, and the general choir of English girls for not doing. A female saint, specially renowned in France, had, for a reason as weighty as Joanna's, viz. expressly to shield her modesty amongst men, wore a male